Here we are on the couch with Mel Abbott. Mel, tonight you've been talking about the impossible patient. That's a headline grabber for anyone. So tell me about the impossible patient. What is an impossible patient?
Those are the serial patients, the ones that are coming back, every few weeks with another health problem, and the same thing over and over again. A lot of anxiety and IBS, and there's always another problem to add to the list of problems, and years and years of illness, and the people that walk in the door and you think, oh no, what am I going to do for this person? I don't have answers for this person.
And in 15 minutes it'll be impossible to deal with as well, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, you can't fix problems that big in 15 minutes, but all my clients are the impossible patients. That is my demographic that I work with. My clients have been ill for an average of 9.66 years, so they are the long-termers. So I am working with that demographic, and I'm getting 90% recovery rates with them.
So how do you deal with the impossible patient? So GPs would refer them to you?
Yeah, well, I think even within a GP session, there are things that can help. So being able to demystify chronic illness to people, which is what I talked a lot about today, about stress response, and about how when the body is stuck in the stress response, you end up with more and more symptoms because your organs are just not being energized, and they're not being nourished, they're not being refreshed, because all the energy is pumping into dealing with the stress response. So if people can understand that better, so if doctors are explaining more about that to people and going, all of these symptoms make sense if you understand your body as a whole system that's got stuck in a stress response. So what is stressing you out? What areas of your life do we need to be able to address so that you can become calmer and your body can start healing? So, that is something that can be touched on in sessions. We also talked about use of language, how, if you're always talking about how bad is your pain, how bad is your fatigue, rather than, how comfortable are you and how energized are you, even the subtle changes like that can help GPs to be able to help those people more.
So what's the science behind it? What is the techniques that you use to...
Well, in my 3-day course, I'm teaching people to understand a lot more detail about how stress affects the body and all of their thinking patterns and their belief patterns that have exacerbated the stress response, and looking at how the brain wires and the pain gate theory, how neural pathways have become overactivated and gates are open, and then how thinking patterns are also exacerbating that. And then I teach them a technique that involves steps, movements, visualization, coaching, and they use that many, many times a day, every time they notice symptoms or the thoughts that create symptoms, so that they rewire their pathways to calm down, and they calm their body, and then they allow natural healing to happen. So what I find is that people within the 3 days get massive improvements. They are a whole lot better than they were, but they'd usually reach full recovery point somewhere between 2 and 6 weeks post-course. Some people take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but we're seeing 90% of people making a full recovery.
So that's amazing. If 9.6 years is the average, and then suddenly, that's remarkable, really.
Yeah, well, I had chronic fatigue syndrome for 11 years. I was on an invalid's benefit. I could barely walk up one flight of stairs. My body was so weak that I couldn't just walk upstairs. I had to lean on the rail and pull myself up with hands and legs. I slept for 3 hours every afternoon, and wasn't working, was very unwell. Day 1 of this course, I was there from 10 till 4. Then I had to navigate London Underground during rush hour, during a time I'd normally be asleep. Got back to where I was staying, and then went out for dinner and went to see a show, and didn't have a nap on day 1.
Wow.
Now, I still had a lot of symptoms, but I was able to do all that. And by a week after the course, I went to a ball in Vienna and danced till 4 o'clock in the morning. At the 2-week mark is when I had a day where I did no symptoms at all and went, oh my gosh, I'm all better. So it took me 2 weeks to recover from something that I'd suffered severely for 11 years.
So your symptoms was caused by what?
Originally a head injury.
Right, which then developed
into chronic fatigue syndrome.
Okay. So the journey for you, head injury, chronic fatigue, and then this course after being sick for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Okay. Who invented the course? What is the basis? I mean, is there any science behind it?
Well, it's all based on Neurolinguistic programming, which was invented by Bandler and Grinder back in the 70s, I think. And there's not a lot of mainstream research into that. It emerged at the same time as CBT, but it wasn't researched in the mainstream quite as much. There are some studies that are showing how incredibly effective it is. I mean, they did a study on Vietnam vets, and they found out of 19 men in the study who had PTSD, 18 of them had got rid of almost all their symptoms after 2 sessions, which was phenomenal, you know, and yet it hasn't sort of tipped over into being a mainstream recognised therapy, despite I think sometimes the results are so good that people are sceptical. There are also quite a lot of studies now happening into the lightning process. There's several that are being done through mainstream universities.
The lightning process being what?
Being the 3-day course that emerged out of NLP.
Right, okay.
So yeah, that's NHS in the UK have funded £200,000 into research in it, but it's sort of all in action now. It's not in peer-reviewed journals yet, so
okay.
it takes
so
time.
If I'm a GP and I've got I'm guaranteed that most GPs would have an impossible patient. What's the best way for them to get some help?
Well, you've got to test the waters first and find out if people are open to it, because some people are simply not open to considering that mind is part of their illness, and all they want you to do is write a script, and so that's probably the best approach. But if you sort of test the waters with people and you're saying, you know, it seems like you've done all these mainstream treatments and you've had a lot of pills and yet these problems are still happening, you know, I'm wondering if it might be linked to your body being stuck in a stress response, and explaining to them how that works. You know, if all your energy is being driven into heart, lungs, thyroid, adrenal glands to fuel you up to fight a tiger, there isn't energy in your digestive, your immune, your hormone system, your reproductive system, and that's why these organs are depleted. So, you know, does that sound like it might be relevant to you that you're stuck in a stress response? And a lot of people will go, yeah, God, I'm so stressed. And it's like, well, you know, now we need to look at how we could help you to address that stress response.
So framing it for the patients, getting them warmed up to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then you're saying that a GP probably can't do that, they need to refer on?
Yeah, I mean, lightning process takes 3 days to teach people. You're never going to do that in a GP consultation, but you can refer people to it and they can go and investigate it themselves. I mean, we have an assessment process to do as well. Like, I don't just accept people because they applied. They have to apply, and I send them a workbook and they work through that, and then I talk to them and see if they're suitable for the course and if they're ready to make the change and so on. So there's quite a lot of background work that I would do before accepting them. But yeah, that is one of the options that I see as really helpful for these chronic conditions. NLP sessions are good as well. You can refer people to NLP practitioners. There's, you know, body talk is a really cool therapy that addresses stress response and emotional sort of trapped issues. You know, hypnotherapy. There's quite a lot of different things out there that people can be referred to.
So the lightning course is available around the countryside?
Yeah, I mostly work in Auckland, but I do hold it in other centres as well from time to time, and clients fly in from all over the country and they stay in the B&B around the corner and come to the course.
So the best way to get hold of you is what?
Through my website, empowertherapies.co.nz.
Okay, which is just going on the bottom of the screen now.
Yep, right,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
Yep, that is the easiest way to find me and find out more info about it.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's also, you know, NLP practitioner websites around that people can look up. In the session today, we did talk about what GPs can do within that consult to just be reframing, teaching people about pain gate theory and about stress response, to start demystifying why people are so ill, and choosing their words a bit better, and teaching people basic calming exercises and breathing exercises. So you can fit that into a 15-minute session. I don't think that from that info alone someone would resolve chronic fatigue syndrome, but it would be a starting point where they could get some hope that they could get change. The worst thing to do is to tell someone that there is no cure for what they have. I was told that, and most of my clients were told that, and you know, I was 21 when I was told there's no cure for what you have and you're always going to be like this, and that made me want to die. And it's not even true. You know, it's mainstream medicine doesn't have a treatment for this. But to say there is no cure for this was an incredibly damaging message to be given. So I'd say, you know, don't say that to people unless they've got about a month to live, and then you're like, okay, there's probably no cure. But for these things like chronic pain, chronic fatigue syndrome, MS, lupus, you know, all these sorts of things, saying, well, you know, the mainstream doesn't have particular answers to this, but here's a whole lot of other things you could go and try.
And I'd imagine that if a GP had one success with one patient, that then their gates would be open as far as their mind, as far as referring on as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do, you know, that's what happens. I get one person that's recovered, and then that doctor says, oh, I'm a bit curious, tell me what you do. And then they send someone else and they go, whoa, this is pretty amazing. So yeah, that's, but it's a bit of a slow process because there's a lot of people who are very resistant to alternative things out there. There's one doctor that I'm not going to name, but they've now received 42 reports from me, of which 41 of those clients had made a full recovery, and they still won't tell anyone about me. And I think that's rather narrow-minded.
Maybe you're his secret then. If that many
well, none of them were told about it by that doctor. Okay. They all found me through their own means. And then told that doctor about it. But yeah, so some people are not very open, but other doctors have been fantastic. You know, they've got a report from me and they've gone, wow, that's amazing, and they've called me and said, look, I'd like to hear what you do. And the doctors who came and heard the presentation today were really positive about it. So yeah.
Mel, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thanks for inviting me.
And we'll get some more information on the website below here now.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.